G'day, welcome to SPL Mixing. Today I'm taking you through Pro Tools shortcuts. We'll start off with the basics and we'll work our way up to some of my favorite and most used keyboard and mouse shortcuts. Let's dive in. So the first thing you want to probably look at is where is your keyboard focused? By lighting up this AZ button, we can basically change the focus of Pro Tools shortcuts to particular parts of the screen. If this isn't switched on, then you may find that some of these shortcuts don't work for you, especially in the edit window. So you're starting a mix and you want to import some audio. For this we need Command-Shift-I. And this brings up a dialog which allows us to select the files that we want to import. I'm just holding down Shift and I'm going to convert these files and come back when they're done. And now we'll put these at the beginning of our session. And that's all of our tracks imported. Now the next step is maybe you want to create some new tracks. For that you'll need Command-Shift-N. And instead of going to the menus, what we can do is we can use some shortcuts to change between stereo and mono tracks. So we'll use Command left and right. If we want to change the type of track, we can go Command up and down arrow. If we want to add more tracks, Command Shift up and down arrow to add another row or to take away a row. So I'm just grabbing 5 VCAs. I'll also grab some mono instrument tracks as well. Once we hit enter, they show in our screen. Alright, so going back to the very basics here, we can use spacebar to start and stop our session. Now, say for example we were in continuous playback mode, which basically doesn't return to where we were. I'll just enable that. To get back to the start of the session, we simply hit return or enter. If we record enable our tracks, we can start recording to them by hitting Command spacebar. Now this next one, if you want to lighten the mood in the studio, you can shift spacebar and play back at half speed. If you make a mistake, it's quite easy to undo just by pressing Z. To redo, you can shift Z. And now on to one of the most important shortcuts you'll ever use, Command S, which is to save your progress. If we want to switch over to the mix window, Command equals, and we can toggle back and forth between the edit and the mix window. Now you'll notice up in the upper left hand corner there are 3 buttons here and they're all lit up, but you can actually have them selected separately. But it's actually quite a good thing to have them all selected like that because it enables you to edit differently based on which part of the waveform you mouse over. You see that it's changing to brackets there and it changes to the hand tool. Very handy indeed. Now if I want to copy something, highlight what you want to copy and press C. To paste, you simply press V where you want it to paste. If you would like to break a region, press B. If we want to heal that break, Command H. So if we create a few more breaks, we can still heal them. The only way you won't be able to heal it is if there is an overlap. It only heals what was originally connected. To mute a region, you can highlight the section that you want to mute, and then you can press Command M. Another important feature to know about is the Tab to Transient feature in Pro Tools. You must ensure that this is enabled, and this allows us to tab to a transient. If we want to select to the next transient, we can simply hold down Shift. Now if we turn off Tab to Transient and use the Tab key, what we can do is we can go between different regions. So let's turn that off. And now all the breaks that we've made at the transient points, we can actually go between that, as well as the break at the end of the region itself. Great for zooming into all the manual fades that you've made and cleaning them up. Now, if we press our P and semicolon keys, we can actually go up or down between the tracks, like so. If we want to expand that selection upward, we can hold down Shift and P, and we can select tracks above. Similarly, we can hold down Shift and semicolon and expand our selection below. Shift M allows us to mute a track depending on where our cursor is placed on the timeline, as you can see there. If we want to solo a track, we can Shift S. If we want to record enable a track, we can Shift R. And we can also Shift I, which enables input monitoring on our track. Of course, we can select multiple tracks and we can control the recording, the input monitoring, the solo, and the mute all together across all those tracks. If I hold down the Control key, I can scrub through the audio by holding down the left click and dragging through it. This is great for identifying any clicks and pops that need to be addressed. Now, if I click on a track, I can Shift and click onto another track, and that allows us to select multiple tracks. Holding down Command Option B brings up the dialog to bounce out our audio. From there, we can make a selection on what type of file we want to create. We can make it offline or real time. We can make it stereo interleaved, or we can make it mono. We can name it, and then we can bounce it out. Similarly, we can use Command Shift K, and that allows us to export a region as an audio file, which is great if you have a sample that you want to extract from a mix and use that in another mix. Let's move on to some zooming shortcuts. So we've got Command square left and right bracket to zoom in and out. Similarly, we can use the T and R to zoom in and out. If we hit Option A, we can zoom out to include the entire timeline from start to finish. If we hit Command, Control, Option, and up arrow, we can compact our entire session so that it fits vertically. From here, we can go very quickly from zooming in and working on something up close. And with the Option plus A and Command, Control, Option and up arrow, we can get very quickly back to a bird's eye view. If we Option and left click, let me just left click here. So I'm going to left click and drag that out. But if I hold down Option, I can expand out all of the tracks. If we hold down E, we can zoom and expand a single track, whichever one has the cursor sitting on it. We can work on it. We can zoom in further, and then we can press E again, and we're back to where we were. Zoom in, zoom out. If there's a specific part of the track that we want to zoom in on, we can press F5 twice to select the single zoom tool. And so we can literally just select that section there. After the selection, it goes straight back to using the Smart tool. Now, it's a pretty common thing that we can scroll up or down in a document, or in this case, Pro Tools. But if we hold down Shift, we can actually scroll left and right. Depending on where our cursor is placed, we can hold down Command, Option and scroll all the way in and all the way out, depending on where that cursor has been placed. If we would like to expand the view of the waveform, we can hold down Shift, Option and scroll, and that enables us to expand or contract the waveform. This does not change the volume as such, it just changes how we view the waveform. Let's move on to grouping. So in order to make a group, we can hold down Command and G after we've made our selection of tracks. From there, we have the option, we can name the group, and you can see what tracks are included in that group. And if we go over to the mix window, we can see that they're all grouped. And we can also see that they are grouped in the edit window. To suspend the group, we can go over to the group window and we can turn off the group, or we can Command Shift G to suspend all groups, and that enables us to make our changes. And now we can turn that group back on. We can suspend all groups again, make some more changes, and then we can turn it back on. Pretty cool. I can then, of course, Option click and all the faders return to Unity. At one time or another, you're going to want to access different edit modes for different reasons. To do this, we can use some of the F keys. So that basically allows us to shuffle the edit along, which is great for dialogue editing if you don't have a set time that you need something to be. To move along to slip edit mode, we can press F2, and that allows us to slip the edit along, and it doesn't affect any other clips on the timeline. F3 allows us to spot a clip. So if you've been editing something and you accidentally shift it, what you can do is you can click on that and it will spot it back to the location that it was originally at. The last mode is more or less a 2-for-1. What we can do is we can select our grid, and from that grid, select based on the note value. There may be some cases like here where the actual grid and the music itself is offset, in which case you can flip over to relative grid mode. I can tab to that, and we're actually making that selection based on the relative grid value. We have quite a few automation shortcuts available to us. The first one I want to show you is where we can activate a parameter on a plugin so that we can automate it. So if I've got this filter here, but I want to automate that low pass filter, I can enable it. From there, I can Command Control left click, and that will bring up the actual automation on the track itself. So as you can see, as I change the filter value, it changes obviously the value of that line, and you can also access the menu through here. We typically see the waveform, so I'm going to select that again. To disable automation, it's the same shortcut that we use to enable it. If we want to cycle through the different automation lanes, we can use Command Control left and right. We can cycle through all the different automation lanes. Anything that we can automate, we can bring that up. Now, if we can Command Control Option and left click on this little window here, that actually opens up automation for every single parameter that we could possibly want to automate in that plugin. This shows up a bit more clearly in the CLA 76. As you can see, every single parameter that I can automate, I can actually click on that. I can bring up the automation lanes, and I can change those values. And you can obviously see that changing in the automation lane as well. You can go nuts, and then you can turn it off using the same shortcut. All right, let's move on to routing. So typically, if you want to route everything to the same output or input or bus, we can hold down Option, Shift, and click. And from there, we can select our input or output or bus. So I've got inputs 3 and 4. You can see that they're all now inputs 3 and 4. Let's go select a bus, which is bus 5 and 6, and they're all routed to the same bus. But what if we want them to come in sequentially? We can Command, Shift, Option, and left click. Let me go ahead and use that same shortcut for the output. So as you can see, we've got bus 1 and 2, we've got inputs 1 and 2, we've got bus 3 and 4, inputs 3 and 4, so on and so forth, all going in sequential order. Moving along to the keypad. If we press keypad 1, that actually allows us to go back in the session, so that's a rewind. Keypad 2, hold it down and you can fast forward in the session. So that's conveniently placed next to the rewind. Keypad 4, activate loop playback. Keypad 5 allows us to similarly activate loop recording, which is very handy if you're recording a singer and you just want them going over that one section. Keypad 6, which enables us to activate punch in for recording. And I've deliberately missed 3 because once we've got punch in record mode enabled, we can actually hit the 3 key to start and stop recording as we're playing back. So it's great for punching in on a single word if you want to do that. Let's move on to keypad plus or minus. Say for example, we're working on this and we want to edit it and we want to shift it around, but we don't want to move it with the mouse. We can shift it based on the values that we've got selected here. Currently I'm in samples, but let's move on to bars and beats, and I'm going to select an 8th note. From there, I can shift it around in increments of 8th notes, backwards and forwards using plus and minus on the keypad. For mouse or trackball, we've got a few combinations that we can use. The first is very simple, it's just left click. If we left click on ascend, we can scroll down to the bottom of that and select new track. From there, we can actually create a send to an auxiliary track, and it's already routed there. We can name that auxiliary and watch what happens. So when we do that, the actual send is called what we want, and the track, it's all pre-routed, which is a huge time saver. What about the right click? We can do quite a few things with the right click. Let's have a look. So we can right click on a send. From there we can rename the send. I'm just going to call this plate. If we want to, we can right-click the play button and access the different play modes, including loop. Same goes for the record button. We can right-click there and access quick punch from that menu. If we right-click on a track, we can hide it. We can hide make inactive. We can make it inactive. We can scroll it into view, which is pretty cool. We can freeze, commit, bounce. From there, we can also make a new track. I'm going to change the input to this track to bus 1, and from there I can right click and rename it to whatever I like. Now for those hard to find tracks, another handy feature is that if we have all of these tracks and they all relate to the same input, output or bus, we can show only that input, output or bus. We can work on them and then we can restore the view that we had before of all our tracks. If you have a third mouse button, I can click my way all the way to the pencil tool, perform my automation, and then flick all the way back to the smart tool using the third mouse button. If I'm working in an extremely busy session and I just want to hide all the tracks and just add in back the ones that I want, I can Option and left click on this tracks menu here. I can hide all the tracks and then add back in the ones that I want to work on. Or I can Option and click one of them and I can then restore all the tracks I had before. This also works for copying plugins, so I can Option and click and drag and drop another copy of that plugin, including all of the settings that it has onto a different channel. It obviously depends on the type of the track. If it's a mono track, it will copy to a stereo track. If it's a stereo track, it will only copy to another stereo track. This also works for the insert slots, as you can see. You can also Command and left click, and that will bypass the plugin. If I hold down Command and Control and left click, that will make that plugin inactive. If I Command, Option and left click, that will bypass all of the inserts on that insert slot across all tracks. And in much the same way as bypass, if I Command, Control, Option and left click, I can make every single plugin on that particular insert across all tracks inactive. And here we really start to get into some badass combos. Combo number 1. If I want to send the locator to any point in the session, I can / and then I can type a number, I can put a decimal point, another number, and then I can hit enter, and that will send me to that point in the session. I can also do sub-seconds as well if I want to be that precise. So here I'm going to type / 1.3 and then enter. If I want to go to the 3-minute mark, it's / 3.0 and then enter. Let's now also change over to bars and beats mode. This works similar to the way that we can send to a particular time. We can send to a particular bar, a beat, or a sub-beat. So if I want to go to bar 2, beat 4, / on the keypad, 2.4, and then enter. And there we are. Now, if I want to jump to bar 6 and beat 3, same thing. I can just go / 6 decimal and 3 and hit enter. And there we are. You can see that we've jumped straight to that point in the timeline based on beats and bars. It's a pretty quick way of getting around the session to specific locations. Here's another favorite combo of mine, which involves creating memory locations. If I want to create a memory location marker, I hit enter on the keypad. So now I'm going to put some markers in for the different sections of the song. It's obviously an intro. Just going to call that V1 for verse 1. Let's call that verse 2 for the sake of example. That's a pre-chorus. And now we hit the chorus. Okay, so we've put in the markers that mark out the different sections for the song. double click on the first marker for the intro, you'll notice that it's got a number there, the number 1, and it's called a marker. It's got the name that we put in for that marker. And you'll see that they go sequentially. So in the order that I created them, wouldn't it be great if there was a shortcut to navigate between them? Well, one does exist. Type decimal, the number of the marker, and then decimal. Obviously, that's a very practical way of getting around the session. We can jump between the markers in a different way by going Command 5 on the keypad, which brings up a list of all the markers that we have. And as you can see, the cursor jumps between those different sections. If we like, we can double click and we can change the number that corresponds to that marker. So if I wanted to get from, say, the chorus and back to marker 10, it's decimal 10 decimal, and there we go. But check this out. Let's make another marker. From here, we can turn it to selection or none. Select track, show, hide. I'm going to call this all. And you notice it doesn't show up as a marker. Let's make another one. But first, I'm going to hide all the tracks and I'll make a new memory location. And we will go none, track, show, hide, and we're going to call this hide. Okay, so if we Command 5 again, we bring up our menu. We can have all of our tracks or none of them. Let's add some tracks back in. Say, for example, that these are all our drums, and we like the zoom settings and the track height and all that sort of stuff. We can save all of that by making another marker. And so from here we can go none, and we can select our zoom settings, our track height, track show hide, and then we can click OK. And now we can go, using our shortcuts, we can go to the pre-chorus, marker 4. We can go to marker 7, hide. And now we can go to 8, which was our drums. So from a practical standpoint, we can go from working on all our drums to all of our guitars to whatever it is that we want to work on. Of course, the other one that we haven't looked at is selection. So we can create markers or memory locations based on selections. Okay, so you can get quite deep in this. It's all based on what suits your workflow. If I want to delete these markers or memory locations, I can Option and left click to remove each one. The ones left over in our menu, the only way to delete those is to turn them into markers. From there you can delete each one, and that's it. Now they're all deleted. Moving on to the very last combo, combo 3, which I use when I'm editing quickly. Okay, so you're working on an edit. What happened there? What did I do? I triple clicked. Okay, so that's triple left click. And that enables me to select everything on that particular track from the start of the regions on that timeline to the very end. Now once that selection's made, I can Command F, and that enables me to batch fade across all of those edits that I made. As you can see there, we've got a fade. And then I can consolidate all of that by going Option, Shift, and 3, and that turns it into one continuous audio file. So let's repeat these steps quickly again. So I'm editing, and now I'm triple clicking, now I'm batch fading, and now I'm consolidating. Okay, very quick. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite shortcut? Let me know if I missed yours in the comments below. Until next time, happy mixing.